So, Vinnie, that's what we would like to cover with you. So, give you a very short introduction about company and business strategy, cover the product portfolio on a high level. Then Dimitri will talk about design considerations and also the right for your business vision that we have. Then Klaus will take over, talk a little bit about the technology platform and also the ERPx product roadmap. And the last thing that we're going to cover is a short piece about pricing. So lots of topics.
Great, thank you.
Company introduction. So, well, you know Unit4 to some extent. We're one of the largest pure play vendors for the service industries. Well, we're generating more than 400 million euros of revenue per year. We are more than 2,500 professionals. And we're actually operating in more than 20 countries. At the end, it's even more because in addition, we also have partners that operate in a number of additional countries. The company is there since 1980. So actually, it's our 40-year birthday celebration this year as a company, so to say. And we've always been focusing on people-centric industries. And in total, we serve more than 5K clients today in a very international setting and environment, which is spreading across more than 100 countries. So that's just the brief overview. We believe that there is a substantial difference in services ERP compared to product ERP. Services industry just works in a completely different way. So it's not about producing material products and delivering them to customers and also making supply chain for this works. It's a different game, right? So it's more about working project oriented, working in projects, dealing with services as products and offerings to customers. In many cases today, this is offered and also paid for as a subscription, and also usage-based pricing and usage-based offerings are getting more and more important for customers. And this definitely just requires also a software vendor to deliver completely different services and products. Now, on the right-hand side, you can see the different industries that we cover, which is public sector, professional services organizations, non-profit, and higher education. And you can also see in which region we are doing that. So in North America, and in Europe, we are actually covering all four of these industries. In the Asia-Pacific area, we are actually focusing only on professional services organizations and non-profit organizations.
Is the majority of, stay on the previous slide.
Yeah.
Is the majority from professional services and higher education, or is public sector fairly important?
No, public sector is also very important. It's one of our big industries, absolutely.
And has it evolved? You know, we're seeing a lot of interest in public health as a result of the pandemic. Are you getting into that portion of public sector?
Which portion? I didn't understand you acoustically.
Public health.
Public health, yeah, we also cover public health. It's not our main focus in public sector, but we also have healthcare customers. I would say our main focus in public sector is more about municipalities and local government in general, but healthcare is a subsegment where we are also present.
For the higher education, I just see so much change because they've had to be moving to online from campus. My God, there is so much opportunity there. Very different than a year ago.
Absolutely, yeah. We see it especially with the universities and colleges that have been relying a lot on international students. So there are a number of these institutions in the States and in the UK, and they really have a completely different situation now than a year ago. Yeah, agree. Let's switch to the next slide. I think that's actually a good point of time to go there, because this is about showing you some customer examples. So here you can see for every industry a few customers, quite different companies. So in the professional services space, you can, for example, see WSP, which is a very large engineering group headquartered in Canada, or Kinetic IT, which is an Australian-based IT services company. And well, actually, when we look at Kinetic IT, one of the main reasons why they selected us was that we had the industry know-how about the IT services and the PSO vertical. And actually, this industry expertise is a very important capability and strength that we offer for all of these customers. Now, when we look at the next industry, which is public sector, for example, you can see Metro Vancouver there. Their main reason, or one of the main reasons why they decided for us, was that they were looking for a system that really gave their users great experience and that also helped them to automate the many workflows that they have across their organization. Higher education, we just talked about it. You can see Selkirk, which is a Canadian college, and you can also see Manchester Metropolitan University, which is one of the largest universities in the UK. And well, they were moving into a cloud environment. They are doing a cloud transition, and to get a modern cloud-based system was one of their major motivations. And it already really paid off, because with their old systems, they would really have run into problems with COVID-19 during the lockdown. With the systems that we have provided to them, they've been able to work on in a proper way, with all or a large portion of their people working from home office. And last not least, we have nonprofit. For example, Hyper International, which is a very large US-based organization helping with the development in many countries, also especially focusing on farming and helping farmers to produce more and to make a living and to build an economy in these countries. And for them, for example, also automation of workflows was a very important topic. War Child, on the other hand, also an international organization focusing on helping children that have been impacted by wars all over the world, is also using our products. And to get a modern cloud platform and also extensibility was also a major topic for them. So it's always the same reasons again and again why these companies are relying on our systems. And those are just a few examples. Of course, there are many more, but at the end, it's always about industry expertise, user experience and automation, and a modern cloud offering and extensibility of the system.
In the professional services world, given that they can't travel as easily now, are you seeing more outcome-based contracts? Because I've heard from a few outsourcers that that's the model they see the market moving to. Or is it still very timesheet based?
No, I think that we see that. I would say there is a trend into this direction.
And your functionality will be able to support that?
Yeah, actually, we are really open in working with other systems. So it's not a monolithic stack that we have. It's actually a very open platform, and you can connect and integrate with basically any system via the interfaces that we offer.
This kind of a big system redesign, major system redesign, you kind of need to put the constraints around it, and you need to think, what is it I'm going to hold still, and what am I going to move? What are the degrees of freedom here, right? So that's like really one slide to kind of go through this. So first of all, I mean, some is probably self-evident or very accepted right now. It wasn't when this whole thing started, which is, running your own data center is a fool's errand. There's unbelievable options out there, and no it's very hard to compete for anybody but sort of a top 3 or 4 players out there. Second one is building
that first point has become very, very clear during the pandemic. Most people who are on premise had a really tough time moving people to work from home, scaling, etc. So if you can do it for them, much better.
Yeah. And again, building it from scratch requires so much capital investment. And, the Amazons, Microsoft of the world, they're putting literally tens of billions of dollars into this. So it's a huge scale business, and they're in it. And we're betting on this. Everything we do is built in Azure, including all the scaling, geographical stuff, tooling, machine learning, all those things. We're just shamelessly taking it and incorporating. 4 is ML. I spent, prior to this, 4 years at Google building sort of ML type. And, ML is very hard to bolt on after the fact. It needs to start from there. All the data pipelines, labeling, ability to aggregate data across tenants, because often individual tenants don't have enough data, is not something you could add, or very, very hard to add after the fact. It needs to be in the fabric. 6 is customer processes span across multiple apps, and what you just said, right? ERP is maybe 25%, of the overall footprint. What happens to the other 75? And it's our responsibility to think about the other 75, not just about our 25. So again, the system from scratch, from the design perspective, needs to take into the account the fact that workflows need to come out of our system, go somewhere else, and come back, and we need to deal with this gracefully and fluidly. 9 is providing this out-the-box fit is expensive. Matthias talked about industry-specific stuff or localizations. And from SAP, they actually did a pretty good job at this in some areas over the years, but that's expensive. Like to try and get localizations for not just like UK and US, like a lot of US vendors talk about, but for Finland, for Norway, for Sweden, for Belgium, that's a lot of real work, and it's a lot of investment. And generally, that's a little bit of a sort of a box. We try to draw the principles we want to express.
Dimitri, this is fantastic. I'm glad you've done that. If you want, I can add 3 or 4 more things to this. We can have a different conversation. But I love these principles you've laid out.
Thank you. Yeah, I would love to get your perspective. There's more kind of, as you know, they kind of spider off into many smaller and different and slightly different angles. But would love to get your thoughts on this as well, separately or yeah. Again, that I've been around now the technology for the enterprise technology over 20 years. The last 5, I think, has been the biggest actual technological shift, in terms of how you put these things together. When I think back to, early 2000s, Salesforce came about, Workday was, 2005, SuccessFactors, we started, I think, 99, things were kind of put together in a certain way. And in the last 5 years, that just kind of gotten blown up, that between, public cloud, the Azure, AWS of the world, machine learning, serverless, containers, all these things just came out of nowhere, not nowhere, but came into the mainstream. And so this creates the opportunity about how to build this apps in a different way. And so in some ways we feel lucky that, we started it when we started it, as opposed to say 3 years before that, because we would have ended up with something completely different. Pillar is, functionality is functionality. So we build this industry specific, but what we also found is that, again, functionality is not enough. Ultimately, it's about how users consume this functionality. So user experience and automation is super important. And the idea here is, I pointed it out in sort of design considerations initially. We needed to create a system that could deliver experience, be different. In fact, in many cases, opposite, of each other. So for instance, what we found with professional users, your finance users, very, very comfortable with complexity, could have a lot of fields, have this sort of a muscle memory where they know all the keystrokes, You could throw a lot at them. They can navigate very well. They want efficiency, right? They don't want one thing at a time. They want show it all to me, and I could deal with complexity and be done, and sit in the system all day. Now, on the other hand, you have consultants on the road who work with clients, nonprofits, C-suite people. None of them wakes up in the morning and says, great day today, I will use my ERP, right? No, they want to go on with their day, but they also need to participate in the ERP side of these things when things get stuck, when they need to approve things, we need to look at things, they need to so the idea here is the experience for them is opposite, right? Where you throw complexity to create efficiency for power users, you reduce complexity, increase learnability, for these occasional users. So the way we're architecting the system is that we do still provide these. Yeah, go ahead.
Mike Ettling told me a few months ago, he says, my screen first thing in the morning used to be email. Now it's Microsoft Teams. So you're right. ERP is not the first screen for most people. They go there only when they need to.
Yeah, or if you go to the next slide, that for many of them, they never go. The idea is they never go there. They could do almost everything that they need to do outside, in Teams, in Slack, in whatever the other client they use, right? So we literally think of these 10-second interactions, right? Where we either push the app to you into your Teams or Slack or mobile. We create the self-composing apps where we notice that one thing's missing, so we say, hey, how about this one? Boom, on the fly, we create an app, you input a piece of data, and you're done. We now have digital assistant where you don't need to know the exact syntax. You can just ask it questions, get answers back, and so on. You never need to go into the menus, navigate, know where to go. So this whole good navigation thing is maybe pretty anachronistic for these kinds of users. They don't want any navigation. They just want yes, no, done, and move on. Next slide. And then for some of them, in many instances,
on the UX,
yeah,
you may, having come from Google, I think you may be a little more nuanced about this, but I've heard from every ERP vendor in the last 5 years, they have changed their UX. I don't think they really have. It's still very transactional, keyboard oriented, and they really have.
Yeah, to me, a great giveaway, I'll tell you what my personal giveaway on this is. When they say, we want to make UX engaging, and I'm thinking, well, those users, they don't want to get engaged. They want to do their jobs. Right. They don't want to get engaged into your ERP. They don't want to have anything to do with, being in the ERP. Many of the users, not all, but some, right? So you don't need to engage them. You need to let them do their jobs.
I wrote a note about 10 years ago where I said the best UX is no UX. Capture as much as possible at source, capture it automatically, have the users only do exceptions. But the world hasn't evolved enough. So, but I think you have the right mindset, and if you can move away from keyboard to much more natural interfaces, it'll get better and better.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we're talking about here with smart automation. Actually, it's like you teed it up for me. A lot of this is, really using ML to automate things we can automate. Whether it's recognizing invoices or fraud or time or other things. Again, building ML into the fabric of the system from the beginning, allows us now and will allow us more in the future to sort of automate a lot of, and often it's not something that's major. Often it's replacing something that would take 2 minutes with something that takes 1 second, right? But multiplied over hundreds and thousands times people do that. That creates a lot of gains, as I said, in things like productivity and business velocity. Technologies, they evolved over the last 5 years, and thinking about them from scratch as opposed to on the stack the way it looked 15, 20 years ago. Public cloud, we standardize on Azure and so on. So it's very, very important, and it's very, very foundational for us, and allows us to use things like ML tools and other things. Next. The other very, very fundamental notion to how we built this is building it with microservices and APIs. Again, think of this as like a big Lego, set, right? Where, there's clear separation of what part of the system does what. There are clear interfaces between them. We can unplug them and replug them and take new ones, so the system can evolve a lot better with you over time. We can, within the same framework, can consume external services. I talked a little bit about things like UI and ability to change UI if needed, because UIs evolve quite fast. So unplug the UIs and plug new UIs in. So the kinds of things that the typical sort of a previous generation sort of monoliths had a hard time with. Like, they would build it, it would be great, and then over time you couldn't change them. That's sort of an issue that evolved with a lot of the sort of more traditional systems. And then last but not least, kind of big area here is thinking again through sort of low code, no code ways of extending the system, extending what we do, but also connecting it to the rest of the universe. Again, this notion that ERP is only 25%, you have the rest of it, and you need to have the same set of tools easily to connect these things together and, again, pop out the process into another app, come back to your own, and for the users to look like you're still in the same thing, as opposed to all the copy pasting that goes on and loads of Excels and other things. So you get an email. That's the idea of extensibility and machine learning. You get an email, and basically email says, hey, you got an invoice, and an invoice automatically already parses things, right? So we'll look at the header, we'll look at the address, we'll look at the bank number, we map it to the right account, right accounts, we extract the amount information, date, and so on. But what you can see here is that one thing is missing, which is invoice number is not processed. And the reason it's kind of because it's sideways, and vertical, right? So initially the system may not recognize everything, but it creates this on-the-fly app and asks me to do that. So I put the field in and it's done. Over time, we use it for labeling, so the system trains itself. Now, as a user of this, I say, hey, do I have any pending tests? I'm doing that in Teams, right? And okay, by that, as a prover, the system knows I have some of these transactions. There's this, Glover Park, whatever I was showing before, and I can either directly approve it right from here, or I can pop it up into another mini app that shows me essentially the details, what's happening. And all of this was done behind the scenes. I didn't have to retype anything. The system just understood and extracted all the right data. I could look at this here, and sort of evaluate and decide whether I want to approve or not, or do it directly from Teams if I recognize the vendor or the amount. So that's an example, something that was, 5 to 10 minutes before, probably not a huge task, but you had to look at the invoice, type the invoice, map the invoice to the accounts. Okay, let me show another quick hit, which shows the example here is, again, the no code, low code. So here we're connecting company house, and that's the credit check service essentially in the UK, right? And this is our extension kit tool. So again, as easy as you put in this URL here, companyhouse.gov.uk, you put in company ID, and then you sort of essentially configure the question you want to ask of a decision maker, right? And the question will be, hey, customer so-and-so hit the screen, what do you want to do about this? Do you want to park him? Do you want to put him in the manual mode? Do you want to deny it? Whatever the case might be. And, so it's pretty easy in the sense that you just pick this from the list of different kinds of macros, you put your text in, you say that, okay, would you like me to park it? And then you take the input as a, customer input as a string, and then you configure this confirmation message, which says, okay, got it, I received that, I acknowledge this. You could also add little things like specify how you want to take this input. In this case, we'll do essentially affirmative or negative, right? Do you want to park it, yes or no? So we'll say equals to yes. Now, the cool thing about using some of these ML tools is that they're smart enough to understand that sure also means yes, and yeah means yes, and all the sort of the NLP around that. so it's very, very flexible. And here's what it looks like in Teams. So it says, hey, customer so-and-so has been identified as insolvent. Would you like me to park it? I say yes, and it's done. So essentially, this is like a minute long. I configured the whole flow, in front of your eyes, right? And we ran the flow against all of the customers. We flagged the ones, and we're able to take natural language input, to deal it and reflect the status in the ERP. Something like, think about in the old days of SAP, what it would take. It would take, months and many dollars of consultants to hook something like that together. And here we could do it in, literally seconds.
Does it have? Are you only supporting Teams? Are you supporting other collaboration tools?
No, we're supporting other tools. Teams, Slack, messaging, things. Yeah. But again, remember the important thing here is we're writing Microsoft's sort of foundational investments, into this.
Yeah, and then the people platform is essentially it's not a platform in the traditional sense, layered sense. It is a number of discrete microservices that encapsulates the core transaction system, and then give you this abstracted view about your ERP, and then a more uniform access to the data, as well as it's sort of hiding. It's hiding by the abstraction. It also hides where data is really coming from. So you can now create experiences on top of this, where you can, through an interface, you will actually be able to retrieve data that comes from different source systems. But when you build your extension, or you interact from your business's other solutions, you don't need to worry about that. You just need to worry about what is it I want to accomplish, what is the data I need, and then the platform sort of handles to get the data to you and make sure that you have transaction integrity and data fidelity at the same time. And I think not only is this available to customers and partners, but this is also what we are using internally ourselves to build. So it's not just that we created something for others, this is for ourselves as well. And it's also driving our transformation that we are now coming to an end with ERP.
So there, it's in Azure. We use this microservices and extension integration kit, Wanda, the digital assistant, and sort of the people platform, the underlying microservices platform underneath of this. We're starting to build these sort of automation things that I mentioned before, smart invoicing, voice recognition, and things like that. We also, as I said, from the beginning, we want to focus on integrations with third parties and using third parties into creating the intake of the third party functionality to expand the footprint of what we're doing as well. So there's a little bit of a sequence to this. We're starting off with financials projects, HCM and US payroll. That will be in Q1 of 2021. Then we're adding procurement and sort of Norwegian and UK payroll, and other things. And then towards the second half of the year, there will be sort of but by the middle of next year, it will be sort of more or less functional parity with our ERP7 in terms of sort of traditional ERP footprint. And then next slide, there is sort of a regions and industries, that again, there will be a little bit of a sequence every 3 months or so. We'll add some. So start with sort of US and Canada, then we're quickly adding, UK, Benelux, Denmark, Asia Pacific, DACH, Spain, Norway, Finland, and then towards the end of the year, we'll catch up with Sweden and France primarily. And industries first, that sort of we have the industry models, which sort of out-the-box configurations. So starting with PS professional services, and then quickly adding, public sector, nonprofit, to that. And then you can see other things there with regards to, smart invoicing